Here are 3 reasons as to why I chose to travel. Having achieved 3 world first records, I want to break down where it all came from and how it all begun, because there could be many people watching this and relating. And back then when I was 16, 17, I didn't really have anyone to tell me sort of the best way to go about how I was feeling or the way I was learning. And so I want to take it back to when I was in high school, just a very normal upbringing on a coast in a small town that no one knows of called Old Colwyn in North Wales. I don't come from a financial background, but sort of very positive role models around me. And when I went on from high school to college, it was in college that I actually realized I was very much a kinesthetic learner, meaning I learned so much more through hands-on practical experience, yet was forced to sit down in the classroom and watch the teacher write his stuff on the whiteboard and explain sort of his lessons or his life experience and expect that to sink in. If it does, great, but with me it just didn't work that way. I needed to go out there, create these sort of experiences, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, try never to make the same mistake twice, and that way I found I would grow and develop. And I was on an outdoor education course, and so that meant there was a lot of sort of outdoor, hands-on, practical elements to the way that I was learning. And it was after the first year or so that I realized, wow, I'm learning so much faster from the outdoor days than from the classroom days. And at this point, I was already, a year and a half in. I remember sort of the rest of the students had got their shit figured out. Some were going to university and realized and knew which sort of universities they wanted to go to for the courses that they wanted to do. And other students on my same course were joining the military. And I was completely lost. I was a waiter and I was a lifeguard. I was raising money, and I remember just being confused. I didn't want to do the military. I didn't want to do the university route. And so I think the first reason as to why I wanted to start traveling was being a kinesthetic learner. This then ties in with the second one, which was my curiosity. I was curious as to what I could do next. I was curious as to what options I had other than university and the military, and I was curious about the other opportunities that may be outside of the United Kingdom, outside of Wales, And so I quickly decided that I wanted to try to travel because I was curious about the world, I was curious about different cultures, traditions, but I was also deeply curious about myself. My upbringing was very physical. I sort of was very athletic in school. I was in the rugby club, I was in the football club. But then as my later teens, I started to drift more and get more into the outdoors. I loved my camping. And so not only was I curious about the rest of the world, I was also curious about myself, how I would handle certain scenarios and situations. Drop me in a snow blizzard and how I would adapt and sort of overcome that. Drop me in an embarrassing situation in the middle of a city, I wanted to learn more about myself because I believed doing it this way I would grow and develop. I would be facing adversity and this would force me almost to level up. And so there was the kinesthetic learning, there was the curiosity, and the third point I believe was influence. I had a heavy influence of different people that I would communicate with, different shows that I would watch, the David Attenborough show, for example. I didn't want to watch his wildlife programs from a TV box. I wanted to be out there amongst it, living and experience it for myself. And then when I came across different people who had also traveled the world, this was enticing. This would get me super sort of enthusiastic. And I remember my granddad, who I've probably only met 4 or 5 times in my life, he was living in Pakistan, in Karachi, for 21 years, and every so often he would come back to visit and he would share these wild stories from his travels that I would be in awe of, and want to taste for myself. And then I also had an uncle who was from Zimbabwe, South Africa, who would also share these different stories, and again this sort of built that curiosity even more so, and I I wanted to see if there was something here. I wanted to see if traveling was the way for me. Would it enhance my knowledge and my experience? Would it enhance me as a person? Would it allow me to grow and develop? Would it force me to face, man up situations whilst I'm out there in the real world, the big bad world, facing often dangerous and reckless scenarios? And of course, then I wanted to put a plan in place. I worked very hard, multiple different jobs, mainly lifeguarding, 240 hours a month. I became disciplined. I started working every single day, cycling to and from work, no matter if it was raining, sunny, snowing. I was grinding and saving up the pennies because no one was going to hand me money. And my parents have always raised me to work hard if I want something for myself. So I was putting the grind in. I was bringing in the money. I was creating a mind map of how I wanted to travel, ticking off visas that I needed, vaccinations, insurance, flights, where I wanted to visit, what I wanted to do in those places that I would visit. I had my whole bedroom wall plastered with magazine photos of the Great Wall of China, of scuba diving, of the Taj Mahal, of the Christ Redeemer. All of these images with a world map with the route that I wanted to travel, so that every day I would wake up, I would see my dream, I'd see my travel plan, and that would keep me focused and disciplined to work hard, save money, and effectively I was just enhancing those 3 major rules, which were influence from other people, being a kinesthetic learner, and curiosity. And effectively I then set off, and it was game changing. I started to take on these different adventures around the world. They organically grew bigger and better. I was on a shoestring budget, which often would force me to do pretty reckless adventures to save money. And then now when I look back and when I'm asked by people sort of where it all begun, if I have to think of 3, which I'm sure there's way more than 3, I would say it's those 3. So if you resonate there, if you're able to relate, recognize that. Don't ignore it, because if I ignored it, I wouldn't be living the life I'm living today. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe for more to come.